Hey everybody, Raul here from Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist and songwriter Richard Vernon. Yay!
How are you doing? Nice to see you, Ron.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Well, Rich, this is such an exciting opportunity to chat, but as always, we like to go to the past. How did you get started in music and particularly on bass?
Okay, so getting started in music, there was always music around me when I was a tiny kid. My dad had Beatles records, which I would kind of hear in the background. And my granddad was a great piano player, so he would always have a piano. And I was always very aware that music was a real thing because I could see his hands on the piano making the music come out. And I used to put my head up against the piano and listen to the reverberation, which was a lovely thing to do as a little kid. So there was music around there. And how I got into bass wasn't anything to do with music, really. It was to do with my schoolmates, and my two closest friends suddenly said, right, we're going to form a band. And I was like, what? I thought we were into football. What's this got to do with anything, you know? And they said, we're going to form a band. And I thought, right, well, I want to be the lead guitarist. And they were like, no, we've got one of those. And I thought, well, I can't be a drummer because my mate is the drummer. So I thought, there's only one instrument left. And they said, you have to get a bass. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. But they said, no, you have to get a bass, then you're in the band. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And it was as simple as that.
Nice. So, are you self-taught or did you decide to pursue further studies?
No, I was self-taught originally. So what actually happened was as soon as I started playing with my mates in school, we were really young, but there was a drum kit suddenly in our spare room, because that's where we used to rehearse. So I started off kind of playing drums when my mates weren't there. And I'd kind of learned the bass just to be in the band. So I was self-taught then, but my mum and my granddad taught me some theory. So I understood about octaves and triads and scales. I knew what they were. And so I took some of that. And then later on, when I got into my teens, I took some lessons off a guy called Tony Muschamp, who was a great bass player. And he taught all sorts of people, you know, and he was really, really good. And he gave me a certain amount of theory. And then I thought he was almost giving me too much. Then he started going off into stuff like tapping and all sorts of things. And I thought, this is too much. And this doesn't, and I'd already started working as a bass player by then. I'd started getting little gigs. And I thought that doesn't fit in people who just want to hear a song. They want to hear me playing the bottom end of a song. Mm-hmm. And so I stopped then. But all of that came in handy to some degree, you know.
Nice, nice. Well, and you've been at this for quite some time. Right, currently, you've been playing with Ricky Warwick,
Yeah.
but also a lot of exposure with The Mission and Peter Perrett.
Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, for a while there, you also did a lot of session work and stuff like that. So you've been in the hustle and at it for quite some time. Tell us about the most recent work with Ricky Warwick.
So Ricky came about through, well, obviously when I was in the Mission for quite a long time in that band. Mark Gemini Thwaite was the guitarist, and I think Ricky was about to start a tour and his bass player couldn't do it. So Mark was the guitarist for Ricky, and he said, look, Rich, can you learn the songs? And it always seems to go that way with me. Somebody rings me up and says, can you learn 15 songs in a week? So you never get more time than that, do you? So I was like, yeah, I really want to do this. And I'd been away from music for 2 or 3 years because I'd been looking after my mum and dad. My mum and dad fell ill, and I thought it was important to look after them. It was longer than that, and so I did that. But then my mum passed away, and so I suddenly thought, okay, I can go back to touring. The Ricky offer came at the perfect time for me, and I jumped back in, and it worked. It was only meant to be for one tour. 9 years later, here we are, and it's great. It works. I really like playing with Ricky. Ricky's a pretty straightforward guy, and a lot of people said to me he's a hard taskmaster. He's hard to work for. And I never found that. I found that he has high standards, but all he demands of you is that you put in as much as he does, which is a lot. He's a worker, you know, he's a working class guy, he's a worker. And I'm comfy with that. I'm a worker too. So I'm not very good at just, you know, taking the wages and jumping ship. If I do something, I want to do it properly. So initially I just kind of played the songs as they were. And then as I got a bit more confident and the band's got more confident, I think we've got a lot freer. Certainly the last couple of tours, it was much more swingy. There's a lot more space in everybody's playing. And I think, you know, bizarrely, as you say, I've been in the hustle a long time. I think I might have enjoyed the last tour we did where we came off the road, I don't know, 6-7 weeks ago. I might have enjoyed that more than any tour I've ever done.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Well, and I realize when you work with a lot of different people, you have to adapt to their music because it
Mm,
has to fit,
mm,
it's what the music asks for.
mm,
But even with that, we always kind of draw inspiration from other bassists and to
mm,
kind of help as input to what we're going to put forward. So
mm.
where do you draw your inspiration?
Do you know, it's a good question, Raoul, because I don't think, I knew you'd ask me this. I don't think I've really listened to a lot of bass players. I think when I was starting, the first two bass lines I learned were Peaches by the Stranglers and Dancing in the Moonlight by Thin Lizzy. Those were the two first things I learned. And they're quite similar bass lines, as you know.
Mhm.
So I kind of worked those out. And then I kind of went backwards a little bit. I started listening to Free. So actually, Andy Fraser, I loved his playing. I loved all the space in it. And I liked the melodies and the aggression in Phil Lynott and Jean-Jacques Burnel. But then equally, I was listening to kind of Stevie Wonder, so I wanted to do that more bibbity boppity stuff. But I do have to change my style a little for who I play with. But mainly, although I listen to all kinds of music, mainly my work has been in rock. So, and when I go into things, it tends to be that I know how to do it. The only time I didn't know how to do it exactly was The Mission, because I'd been a finger player before then. And when I did the tour with The Mission, I think I was about 3 weeks in, and I thought, this just doesn't sound like it needs to sound. I need to get a pick and do it and pick that style up quickly. And I did that, and I've become much more of a pick player now. I can do both, and I swap. But I think in terms of Ricky's stuff, I mean, I play my way, and it's quite Thin Lizzy orientated because Ricky was in Thin Lizzy, so that suits me. But a bass player I really like is Chris Chaney. And I don't really cite a lot of bass players. I don't tend to think that bass players are brilliant because I think the hardest thing to do is Cliff Williams' job. It's to hold a song down and make a room full of people move. That is much harder than all the slapping and all the other stuff, which I can do as well. But that holding eights down is a much, much harder gig, don't you, Raoul? And all bass players kind of nod when I say that. So I think some of the stuff with Ricky just sounds like me. Some of it I do like how Chris Chaney makes things sound, the way he made Jane's Addiction sound simple, but there was that little bit of melody in there as well, which I really love. So I'll often have him in mind when I'm playing Ricky stuff.
Nice, nice. Well, and it's interesting you're mentioning sound because, again, you have a very interesting bass that we want to talk a little bit about, and tell us how you're getting your sound.
Yeah, so the bass I've had new since I was a school kid. So I bought this. I was the only kid in school with a Fender. So I bought this with like summer holiday money, and my mum said, if you save £1, I'll give you £1 towards it. And this brand new was £290.
Oh, wow.
So I bought this when I was a school kid. I remember it getting delivered. And so I've had it since then, and it's got all the signs of that's genuine road wear. That's not fake. That's how it is. So, and the sound, this is pretty much my sound, this guitar. I can go through nearly anything. I mean, amp-wise, at the moment, I'm using kind of EBM stuff, but I've used Ashdown. I used to have a brilliant Trace Elliott rig that I loved, which was a Valve V6 with an 8x10, and that sounded incredible, but it was quite temperamental. So that used to worry me when I was out. I used to love that. But mainly that 8x10, or a 4x10 and a 1x15. I'm not too fussy about the head. But this guitar has been quite heavily modified. So it's got the original position pickups there. But I've also added those. And our guitar tech added this blend switch here. I tend to use mainly this, and I back off a little to get a little bit of this back bridge pickup, which gives me more kind of clank. But with this bass, I can kind of get any sound. And on our very last tour, our guitar tech, when I was in bed, took the bass to pieces, scared the life out of me. I just saw it on his Instagram page. I was a nervous wreck. And he had the neck off, he had the pickups out, he had everything off, and he reset it up, and he took the action up quite a bit. So immediately it sounded great, and he went out and bought me thinner picks, just told me, use these. And it really, really helped. So it's a little harder to play, but it sounds better. There's more of a clean note. But that thing sounds great. It sounds mellow when I want it to. It sounds really aggressive when I want it to. And I've got an old 70s jazz that I use for recording, which is beautiful, but I can't play it live because it doesn't like being hammered. You know, sometimes you have to really give it some with Ricky and with the Mission as well at times. And the precision is better for that. It fights back, you know, there's a bit of resistance. But that's the sound, it's that guitar. And I've got a hip shot on there as well, so a lot of the stuff I do, it needs to be detuned. And that's the sound, it's that guitar. And I like using really new strings. I like that tone, and I can control that very high-end tone. So it doesn't sound like I've got new strings, but I know it's there. I've got that kind of clarity when I need it. So it's that guitar, and the amount of times I've tried other guitars and the crew were like, nope, get the white one out.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, and with the additional pickup, it's very interesting because it kind of reminds me, Billy Sheehan had modified his, but do you have yours blended into just one output, out to one jack?
Yeah, I do. I think that's okay. I mean, I never, the kind of music I tend to do, the kind of rock music, it demands a lot of nuance in the playing. I don't think it does in the sound so much. Okay. I mean, when I get a sound, if I've got an 8x10, I've got this bass, most amps with a little bit of mid scoop, but some mid left there for clank, most amps will give me the sound I need. So I've never found I needed to go further than that, and that suits me, and it's a pretty simple setup. But the amount of times I go to a studio, the engineer, I'll say, wow, that sounds good, what have you done? And the engineer will go, nothing, I've not touched it, which is nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, many people spend a lifetime searching for that special bass, so you're very fortunate that you've got it kind of out of the gate.
Yeah, I agree. Out of the gate, I'd never thought of it that way. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So as we look forward, what is in the works? What do you have planned? What's coming up?
So with Ricky's got more festivals. I think the last tour we did got a lot of attention, and we got booked for some different stuff. So we've got festivals lined up. We're doing Wacken in Germany, which is going to be a buzz for us. There's more tours later in the year, so there's quite a bit going on with Ricky. I've also got my own band, which I do, called Manbird, which I formed with Peter Perrett's drummer and another friend who I used to have a publishing deal with. And we've got an album kind of ready to go. We're just waiting to put that out. I helped some German friends called The Last Decade as well. And they're people I know because the singer used to work for the Mission's record company, been in the business a long time. There's two singers, and the other singer is the main creative force behind End of Green, who were a big German kind of emo goth band. So I'm playing with them as well. I've got another potentially quite big gig that I'm in the running for, and I don't want to say it because it always jinxes it.
Yes.
So that's later, much later in the year. But so far, the year's looking quite busy, but I've got nothing to do till March, which I needed because I've been busy the last kind of 6 months. I've been full on. My head's kind of been spinning a bit, and so I've got a little bit of time at home at Christmas, New Year, and into the spring, and then it gets busy again in March. So yeah.
Very nice, very nice. And if people want to know what you're up to, because it sounds like there's a lot of exciting things coming down the pike, where's the best place for them to look?
Probably my Instagram. I mean, I don't push a lot of stuff. I don't like to be that guy, but my Instagram page, Richard Vernon, you can see what I'm doing there. I try and put some less obvious stuff on it, so I do take people backstage, and I sometimes show the dressing rooms and the 30th hotel room, and I put something up one time just to show people, you know, I'd got back to the hotel at 3 a.m. I was like, it's not all glamour. My room looked like an absolute tip. And somebody went through, like, I'd left all this stuff on the bed, and they went through and they were like, wow, you've got the same kind of inhaler as me for your asthma. I was like, people really scrutinize it, you know. But on there, I put most stuff on my Instagram page.
There you go. Well, I think anybody that has done any touring is very much aware that when you're on stage and the lights are on, it's one existence. But if you're up there for 2 hours, the other 22 hours of the day are way less elegant and exciting, and many times so demanding, even just the interpersonal relationships with the other musicians, because everybody has their personality, everybody has their taste. There's a lot of tight confines when you're on the road with other people.
Yeah, really. I mean, I can tell you've toured by the fact that you'll even bring that up. I mean, somebody I know asked me to do a tour recently that I had to do an hour. I couldn't do it. Time-wise, I couldn't do it. But I said, what happened to your bass player? And he said he was quite inexperienced with live work. He'd done a lot of studio work, and he said he just couldn't take how grueling it was. And I think people underestimate that a lot of the time, as you know, on tour is spent trying to stay fit, trying to stay healthy, trying to not fall out with people, because you've got a lot of big personalities if you're on a bus or in hotel rooms every morning, and people get tired. And it's okay doing 3 or 4 shows, but when you do 20, 30, 40, it is grueling. I mean, I remember chatting to Wayne once out at the Mission. We woke up in Lisbon, in Porto, in Portugal, and the tour bus was parked by the main river. It was outside the Hard Club in Porto. And it was such a lovely day. And I got up off the tour bus and I went and cleaned my teeth by the river. And I said to Wayne, what a privileged existence this is. And he went, right. He said, I still feel that. And it is, there's no doubt. I still feel the romance of touring. I still love it. But equally, I mean, I think people have no idea how just shattering it can be at times, you know. And I think the social skills, as you know, I think social skills are as big a part as the playing.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, I'm always remembering I was doing a tour in New York City, and I got something on my jacket, and I went to wash it in the dressing room, and the water that was coming out was dirtier than what I had on my jacket. So I'm like, well, I will not be washing this at this particular junction. I guess we'll just leave it that way. Richard, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your music. We're looking forward to great things. Folks, you've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Richard Vernon.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, Raoul. Many thanks.